Welcome. My name is Ethan Cole, and this is my confession. Respect follows money the way shadows follow light, and I used to walk toward brightness like a priest with a calculator. I built rooms where silence cost extra, where smiles were plated beside amuse-bouches, where the clink of a spoon arrived curated and polite. I believed decency could be budgeted, that kindness belonged on a prefix with a wine pairing and a note from a chef whose hands had never blistered. If a bill could absolve me, I paid it and called the receipt a virtue. That night the city confessed in rain. My driver missed the turn to my usual lounge and drifted into a neighborhood that never hired doormen. He offered to loop back. I told him to stop. I wanted to see if the world still worked without valet lighting and a name at the host stand. A neon sign blinked in the asleep. Inside, the floor remembered shoes. The lights hummed an electrical doubt. I slid into a booth whose upholstery kept a history of arguments. The cup arrived before my order, like a reflex. "Refill?" she asked. Lily, according to the tidy script on a tired apron. Hair pinned like a decision, sleeves rolled, eyes steady. "I didn't order this." "You looked like you needed it," she poured. The surface trembled like a lie choosing its wording. I could have let it in there. Money is habit-forming. I mentioned service with a smile that had closed deals, uniforms in a tone that had moved shipments across oceans, standards the way men audition for moral authority. She did not flinch. As a customer called, the pot's metal lip clipped my cup. Heat striped my suit, dark and immediate, as if the cloth had decided to admit what it cost. The room paused. Not dramatic silence, just a communal breath. I waited for apology or panic. She looked at me, not up, not down, only level. "You can wipe off coffee, Mr. Cole," she said, reading my name from the card I had let slip onto the counter. "Arrogance stains deeper." It wasn't loud. Adequate. The line found the one place in me without a price tag. My hand reached for my wallet and stopped halfway, a puppet whose string had been cut. For once I didn't pay. I stood, left the receipt blank the way confessions sometimes stay unsaid, and walked out past a bell that sounded embarrassed to be involved. Outside, the rain stayed honest. The coffee cooled behind me like evidence I wasn't sure I wanted on the record. Her name rode home with me. Lily Hart. It threaded through the elevator's hush and hovered over the marble island that reflected a man who had organized his life so thoroughly he had nothing left to arrange inside. I hung the suit and watched the stain dry, a watermark I couldn't read. I told myself I'd forget her by morning. Morning arrived with her sentence echoing along the glass, and it sounded less like accusation than mirror. Sleep didn't come. I drafted a letter in my head to the diner's owner, notes about standards, a polite bullet aimed at the only uncurated room I'd entered in months. The letter wrote itself in the voice I used for everything respectable. I did not send it. I filed it under later, the drawer where shame pretends to schedule. At 4 I stood in my kitchen holding a glass of water that tasted like negotiation. The stain darkened. It stared back the way an old photograph does when you finally notice who is missing. I thought about control, about the altitude I had purchased by refusing turbulence, and about a woman who had spilled coffee, and then the geography of a room with a single sentence. For the first time in years, I wondered who I would be if money were a costume I had to take off. When the sun finally tried on the day, it didn't fit me. Power makes anger look reasonable. The morning after the diner, I woke to the memory of her words, sharp, surgical. Arrogance stains deeper. They looped in my head like bad hold music. By 9, I had already converted humiliation into strategy. By 10, I had a name, a location, and a plan that didn't need to sound like revenge to count as one. I called an inspector I'd helped once, an unspoken favor wrapped in legalese. I didn't ask him to target the diner. I just reminded him of community standards. He understood. People always do when money tilts the sentence. At noon, my assistant came in with proofs for the museum gala. "Your table's next to the mayor," he said. "Put me near the exit," I replied. "It's the only conversation that ends on time." He laughed like laughter was allowed. The museum wore glass like armor. Champagne moved faster than sincerity. I was shaking hands with people who had once dreamed of meeting me and couldn't recall my name by dessert. That's the secret of status. Everyone wants proximity, no one wants memory. Then I saw her. Lily balanced a tray with the precision of someone who didn't need applause. Black dress, hair in a tidy knot, sleeves rolled just enough to mean business. She approached with calm that made the room fidget. "Mr. Cole," she said evenly. "Lily," I answered. Her name felt strange in my mouth, like honesty does when you've gone without it. "I heard the diner had some staffing changes," I said, pretending not to be the cause. "Some places run on tips," she said. "Others run on guilt turned into checks. Both keep the lights on." "I don't believe in guilt," I replied. She met my eyes. "Convenient. Some people pay for food. Others pay for their conscience. Do I look like a man who buys his conscience by the glass?" "You look like a man who can afford any story about himself he wants to hear." She turned and walked away. I stood with an empty flute and the heavy silence of being correctly summarized. Later, my phone buzzed. My operations director texted, "Inspection done. Minor citations. Lesson delivered. I typed back, "Good?" Then stared at the word until it lost its shape. The next day, I saw her again. She was leading through a side corridor behind the catering station, hair damp with sweat and fluorescent light. I stepped into her path. "I hear the inspector paid you a visit," I said. "You hear things," she replied, not stopping. "Do you ever listen to them?" I followed her down the hall. "You spilled coffee on a suit worth more than the diner's rent." She turned, met my gaze. "And you spilled leverage on a woman worth more than your reputation." I forced a smile. "You're not angry?" "No," she said. Anger assumes I expected better. Her calm hit harder than shouting ever could. "No apology then?" I asked. "For the coffee?" "No." "For the life you rearranged by making a phone call?" Her lips twitched into a tired smile. "I don't need your apology. I need you to stop believing it's a currency." Her words landed clean. For a moment, I had nothing to sell in reply. "I didn't mean to hurt you," I said quietly. "You didn't mean not to. That's the difference." She walked away, leaving me alone with the sound of my own breathing, loud in a hallway that suddenly knew too much. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The rain had stopped, but the city still dripped. I thought about every time I'd renamed cruelty as efficiency, dominance as leadership, guilt as philanthropy. The math no longer added up. By morning, I convinced myself to fix it. Not change, just fix. Men like me repair the consequences, not the cause. I sent flowers to the diner and signed. I added a note to my calendar. Follow up on staffing issue. I told myself it was concern, not penance. Then, in the mirror, I caught my own reflection smirking, as if even my face knew better. When the call came from my director confirming the diner's fine had been paid anonymously, I didn't feel vindicated. Just tired. For the first time, I wondered if I was actually powerful, or just addicted to the illusion that breaking things meant I was alive. By nightfall, I drafted an apology message I'd never sent. You were right about the stain. I deleted it. The next morning, I ordered my driver to take a longer route to work, through that same street, past the flickering sign that still said Din R. I looked at the empty space where the E should have been and thought, maybe that letter was the truth, the part missing because of me. Then I told the driver to keep going. The morning after she refused my offer, I pretended it didn't matter. People always say that when it matters most. I buried myself in meetings, in numbers, in the hum of people who still called me asterisk sir. Asterisk, it all sounded like a rehearsal for something no one wanted to perform. By noon, I caught myself checking the diner's address on my phone. I closed the screen like I'd been caught cheating on ambition. She had unsettled me, and I hated how alive that felt. I decided to fix the balance the way I always did, with control disguised as generosity. Her ex-boyfriend ran a food truck that coughed smoke and bad decisions. I called a friend in permits, arranged a miracle spot on a busy corner, and wrote it off as philanthropy. When Lily found out, she didn't text. She showed up. My assistant tried to stop her. She walked past him like gravity doesn't negotiate. The office door swung open, and there she was, no makeup, no fear, a folder in her hand. "You do not help people, Mr. Cole," she said, dropping a copy of the lease on my desk. The paper slapped wood. "You purchased them. That's not fair," I said, sitting straighter. "I'm connecting dots. Creating opportunity." She folded her arms. "You're drawing lines around people and calling it a gift. You'd prefer I do nothing?" I asked. "I prefer you stop mistaking control for kindness." Her voice stayed even. It carried through the glass. I could feel my staff listening outside the door. "Do you really think I'm incapable of good intentions?" I asked. "I think you confuse intentions with terms," she replied. "Good doesn't need a contract." She turned to go. "Lily," I said. She stopped but didn't face me. "You only say my name when you want to win." Then she walked out. The silence left behind wasn't empty, it had teeth. I sat there and looked at the skyline through the glass wall. The city pulsed like it didn't care who owned what. For the first time, I felt smaller than my office. That night, I canceled the deal, paid the rent myself, and handed the property back to the city. I wrote a check to a business fund with no note attached. It wasn't virtue, it was detox. Still, I drove to the diner after dark. I didn't go in. I just watched through the window as Lily moved between tables, refilling cups, brushing crumbs into her hand like every detail deserved respect. She smiled at an old man counting coins and poured him coffee before he could ask. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, emails, meetings, invitations. I ignored them. Watching her was strangely restful. She worked like someone who didn't need an audience. I envied that. The next morning, I showed up unannounced at one of my restaurants. The chef smiled too quickly. The hostess fixed her posture. Everyone tried to look asterisk perfect. Asterisk, the sound of forks on porcelain was rehearsed harmony. I realized I'd built an empire that didn't breathe unless I gave permission. I told the manager, "Tonight, dinner's free for everyone." He blinked. "Should we say it's a charity event?" "No," I said. "Just serve people." He hesitated. "What's the reason?" I looked at the polished floor. "Because it's dinner." He didn't understand. I didn't blame him. That night, I drove back to the diner again. The neon still flickered, missing its E. Inside, Lily was cleaning tables. Her sleeves were rolled up, her hair escaping its tie. I walked in, and the bell gave its nervous ring. She looked up. "You again." "Coffee," I said. She poured without asking how I wanted it. "You planning to buy this place too?" "No," I said. "Just trying to earn a refill." She slid the cup across. "That's the first honest thing you've said to me." I sipped. It was bitter and perfect. "Why are you here, Mr. Cole?" she asked. "I'm not sure yet," I said. "Maybe to see what it feels like when no one owes me anything." She leaned a hand on the counter. "It feels ordinary. Most people live here. Maybe I should try it," I said. "Maybe you should stop trying," she replied. "Just be." She turned away to serve another table. I sat there longer than I meant to, listening to the soft clatter of plates and the steady rhythm of a life that didn't need headlines. When I left, she called after me. "You forgot your change." "Keep it," I said. "I wasn't offering a tip jar," she answered. "I was offering a chance to learn what fair looks like." That stopped me. I turned, smiled once, small, genuine, and walked into the rain. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerful. I just felt present. Change didn't arrive like revelation. It leaked. It started with noticing. I noticed how my staff's laughter rose 2 notes higher when I walked into a room. How compliments arrived too quickly, like they'd been rehearsed in the elevator. How my restaurants hummed in front of customers, but screamed behind kitchen doors. The noise of success suddenly sounded like warning. I also noticed Lily. Not because I wanted to, but because attention, once freed, goes where truth lives. I saw her at the diner one morning, while my driver refueled across the street. She was half carrying a teenage girl with a cough that belonged to poverty. She guided the kid to a booth, tucked a blanket around her knees, poured tea, and said something that made the girl smile through exhaustion. No audience, no cameras. Just the quiet competence of someone who knew mercy didn't require ceremony. Later, when the girl lifted her sleeve, I caught the hospital wristband. I went home and called the hospital foundation I'd once endowed for press coverage. "Pay her bill," I said. "No name, no story." It was the only language I spoke, money as confession. The next afternoon, an envelope arrived at my office. The handwriting was small and firm. Asterisk, real help doesn't hide behind bank transfers. Asterisk. I stared at it long enough for guilt to evolve into clarity. So I went to the diner. The bell above the door stuttered like it was nervous to see me again. Lily was behind the counter, hair pinned up, hands busy, eyes alert. When she saw me, she didn't sigh, smile, or ask why. She just kept working until I spoke. "Why did you refuse the payment?" I asked. "Because I'm not an invoice," she said. "I was trying to help." "You were trying to feel better," she replied. "There's a difference. I don't expect gratitude." "No," she said, pouring coffee for a trucker at the next booth. "You expect control." "Same thing, different wrapping." I sat down because standing felt dishonest. "Your sister's the girl?" "Yes." She wiped her hands on a towel. "She is stable. We'll manage." "I only wanted to." She cut me off. "If you want to help, sit." Heat. Tip Ruben like his rent's due yesterday. See us when we're not your project. So I did. I ordered eggs and toast. They arrived uneven but warm. I tipped Ruben more than necessary and watched him tuck the bills into a jar labeled asterisk college fund / maybe. Asterisk. At my own restaurants, I trained staff to hide fatigue behind performance. Here, everyone looked real, tired, stubborn, alive. A kid spilled water, and Lily laughed instead of apologizing. An old man argued with his reflection in the window, and she refilled his cup like that was therapy. The longer I sat, the more something inside me began to shift, not loudly but irrevocably. The world didn't need another chain of perfect places. It needed one imperfect one that remembered people existed between paydays. My phone buzzed. A partner crisis in Hong Kong, a press leak, the usual flames. "We should issue a statement," my director texted. "No," I replied. "Let it breathe." He called immediately. "Since when do we let anything breathe?" "Since now," I said and hung up. Lily raised an eyebrow. "You just fired someone, didn't you?" "Not this time." She smiled faintly. "Miracles happen." I stayed through the slow hours, when sunlight gets bored and starts leaving early. Teenagers argued over fries like philosophers. A mother fed her toddler with the same spoon she used for herself. I'd built restaurants where moments like this were designed, timed lighting, curated playlists, conversation prompts. This one had no script, and somehow it worked. When the dinner rush began, I helped without thinking, carrying plates, wiping tables. I broke a glass and apologized to everyone except the glass. Lily handed me a broom. "Consider it penance," she said. "Do you forgive me?" She shook her head. "That's above my pay grade." When I left, the night air felt earned. The city's noise didn't judge. It just kept going. At home, I walked past framed magazine covers with my face on them. Asterisk the visionary of taste, asterisk the empire builder. I stopped in front of the suit with the coffee stain. The mark had darkened, spreading like an honest truth. I touched it and thought of her line. Asterisk arrogance stains deeper. Asterisk. I finally understood she hadn't meant coffee at all. The next morning, my inbox was on fire. Lawyers, investors, reporters. I ignored them and opened the diner's website instead. Someone had uploaded a photo. Lily serving a customer with that small, unhurried smile. No branding. No logo. Just humanity framed in bad lighting. For once, I didn't want to edit the picture. I sat back, exhaled, and said aloud to no one, "It's cracked." And for the first time, I met myself. The call came at 3:07 a.m., the hour when courage sleeps and accountants don't. My lawyer's voice was raw paper. "We've got movement," he said, which in our dialect meant disaster. A junior auditor had followed a thread through our purchase orders and found an entire company hiding beneath mine. My partner, friend, brother in profit, the man who once toasted me as indispensable, had built a shadow network that siphoned money so cleanly it almost looked grateful to leave. By sunrise, I was the headline. Accounts frozen. Investors concerned. Reporters calling everyone who'd ever shaken my hand. The board convened a video meeting that sounded like the weather complaining. Someone suggested a statement. Someone else suggested I step aside temporarily for optics. Optics, corporate code for, "We want your head, but politely." By noon, a blog posted an expose so detailed I wondered if they'd hired my conscience as a consultant. I scrolled past a photo of myself at a gala, Lily's words echoing. Asterisk you can wipe off coffee. Arrogance stains deeper. Asterisk. The empire began its slow collapse in real time. Chefs quit mid-service. Suppliers demanded payments in advance. A landlord I'd once taken to Paris remembered our lease's smallest print. My inbox turned from praise to paperwork. Every "Dear Mr. Cole" felt like a condolence letter. For 2 days, I tried to contain it. Lawyers, statements, calls that ended in silence. But control, it turned out, didn't negotiate with math. My empire wasn't stolen. It was hollow. I'd built it from confidence, not trust, and confidence leaks faster. On the 3rd day, I stopped pretending. I walked out of the glass tower I'd designed to look eternal, and into air that didn't know my name. I took the subway for the first time in years. The car smelled like exhaustion and honesty. No one cared who I was. It felt like mercy. The rain returned that evening, soft, untheatrical. I walked until my feet argued, until the streetlights began their nightly trial. That's when I saw the familiar flicker, DNR. Still missing its E. Still surviving. Inside, the bell gave its timid confession. The room was half full. A construction crew, a woman studying bills, an old man counting sugar packets. Lily stood at the counter, hair tied, sleeves rolled, eyes steady. She looked up and paused. Not pity. Not surprise. Just recognition. "Coffee?" she asked. "Yes," I said. My voice cracked like something cheap. She poured and set the cup down gently. "Rough week." "You could say that." "Good," she said. "Rough means you're real." I almost laughed. It came out as breath. I sipped. The coffee was strong, defiant. The kind of bitterness that tells the truth. A man in a cheap suit at the next table muttered about losing his job. Lily topped his cup without asking, told him, "You'll land." He nodded like she'd granted parole. When my phone buzzed again, I flipped it face down. "Press requests," I said. "They want a quote about redemption." "You should give them silence," she replied. "It's the only answer they can't misprint." I nodded. "I owe a lot of people more than breakfast." "Then start there," she said simply. We didn't talk after that. She served others, and I watched how she moved, steady, deliberate, never rehearsed. Every act looked small until you realized she'd built an entire world out of decency and caffeine. When I left, I reached for my wallet. She slid the card back toward me. "We're square," she said. "You sure?" "I'm not your charity, Ethan." It startled me, hearing my first name from her mouth. It sounded like something salvageable. Outside, the rain was patient. I stood there for a long minute, feeling both emptied and rinsed. The city hadn't forgiven me. It simply hadn't noticed my fall. Which, for the first time, was enough. That night, I sold a watch that cost more than a month of payroll. I packed 2 suits, one that fit, one that didn't. The stained one stayed behind, its mark spreading like proof. I gave notice on the penthouse. The doorman looked sad in a way that implied loss of tipping income, not affection. When I reached my smaller apartment, I sat on the bare floor and realized I'd forgotten how silence sounds when it isn't waiting for applause. Sleep found me eventually, not deep, not forgiving. Just enough to remind me I was still capable of beginning again. And when morning came, I knew exactly where to go. Confession isn't holy. It's just fatigue that finally speaks. One morning, I woke up too tired to keep defending ruins. Lawyers shouted, reporters called me former mogul, and for once, that word fit. I turned off my phone and walked until the noise behind me gave up. Rain led me to the diner. The bell stuttered when I entered. Lily looked up. "Back again?" she asked. "I figured I'd start where I stopped pretending." She nodded toward the booth that wobbled. "You've earned it." She poured coffee, black, unflattering. I held the cup like truth. "I was wrong," I said. "About what?" "About everything. Power, respect, decency. I bought all 3 and called it character." She studied me. "And now? I want to stop paying for peace." "That's the expensive kind anyway," she said. She dropped a small notebook on the table. "The roof leaks. The owner's selling. You want to help? Bring a ladder, not a lawyer. You're asking me to work? I'm asking you to show up." So I did. That afternoon I climbed the roof, awkward, sweating, alive. Lily steadied the ladder and muttered, "Try not to fall. I can't afford witnesses." By dusk, the leak was patched, and I was filthy but calm. When I left, she said, "You only broke 1 tile and 3 illusions. Will this buy forgiveness?" I asked. "No," she said, "but it buys breakfast." That night, I boxed up the stained suit and wrote on the lid, "Keep if honest." Asterisk. For the first time in years, the silence around me didn't need an apology. We closed the diner for repairs and turned it into a construction site with hope taped to the walls. The roof stopped leaking, the paint forgave the years, and every nail sounded like punctuation in a new sentence. Lily ran the place like a quiet general. She didn't shout, she pointed. I followed, pretending it was my idea. We reopened on a Sunday. The sign still said dinar, but the bell over the door finally rang with confidence. People came back. Some brought stories, others brought appetite. We hung a small board that read "pay it forward." Those who could, left money. Those who couldn't, took a meal without guilt. I learned to carry trays badly. Lily watched every near disaster with amusement and the faintest pride. "You are improving," she said once. Statistically, Reuben cooked like he was trying to heal something. Jazz still studied between shifts, and Tasha ran the floor with the patience of a saint who charges by the hour. The place began to hum, not with profit but with life. One afternoon an old man paid with coins that didn't quite add up. Lily covered the rest and winked. "We accept hope as currency," she told him. I realized then the empire I'd built had never been alive. This small diner, with its crooked chairs and honest noise, was. At closing, I wiped tables that didn't need wiping. Lily watched me. "You're staying late," she said. "I'm still learning," I replied. "No," she said. "You're remembering." For the first time, I understood what she meant. The past doesn't send warnings. It shows up in a suit that still believes I care. Mine arrived at lunchtime, carrying an envelope and an old grin. "Ethan," he said, voice smooth as varnish, "you look reformed. The market's forgiven you. We're launching a new restaurant group. We want your name on it." I leaned on the counter. "You mean the same market that buried me last year?" He smiled. "That was yesterday's scandal. People love a comeback story." "Do they?" I asked. "Or do they just love a rerun that ends in fire?" He slid the envelope toward me. "Equity, board control, 7 figures, and a public apology from us. You don't belong in a diner, Ethan. You belong in headlines." I glanced at the worn floor, the hum of the coffee machine, the soft clatter of cups. "You're wrong," I said. "This place actually feeds people." He smirked. "Think it over." Then he left, trailing confidence like perfume. I waited until the door stopped ringing before I opened the envelope. Inside were numbers, offers, promises, every old language I used to speak fluently. Lily appeared behind the counter, drying her hands. "That looks heavy," she said. "Depends how much your soul weighs," I answered. "You thinking about going back?" "I'm thinking about who I'd have to stop being to fit in again." She set down the towel. "Then don't fit. Some doors are better left closed." That night, after closing, I took the envelope out to the alley. The rain had started again, gentle, deliberate. I tore the papers once, twice, then a third time until the wind took them. For the first time, I didn't chase what was leaving. When I walked back in, Lily was wiping the counter. "So?" she asked. "So they made me an offer," I said. "And?" I told them I already work somewhere that serves redemption by the cup. She raised an eyebrow. "Congratulations. You're promoted to dishwasher." I laughed, loud, unpolished, real. The bell chimed as 2 soap customers entered. Lily nodded toward the trays. "You're up, boss." I grabbed one, still grinning. "Careful," I said. "I'm new at this." "Good," she said. "Means you can still learn." I walked into the small, warm chaos of the room, coffee steaming, voices rising, rain tapping the windows, and for once, every sound felt like home. Thanks for being here. Every story deserves someone who listens. Subscribe, because the next confession might change the way you see everything.